Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I'm joined by Nick Gregorio. Nick, how you doing today, man?
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on the show, and let's chop it up. What do you got?
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited to have you. A little bit about Nick. He's a producer, director, known for Happy Birthday Harris Malden from 2008 and Green from 2010. But for right now, I want to talk about something else. Today's January 11th. You guys are watching this on January 13th, but today, Nick dropped Old Strangers. Now, a little bit about Old Strangers. Three friends reconnect in a scheduled mountain town, a secluded mountain town, after a long quarantine. Now, while they're out for a hike, the trio stumble upon something dark and terrible in the deep woods. Now, obviously, living through COVID and living through a quarantine, we all know that feeling of finally getting to see somebody again for the first time in a long time. But maybe we're not all the same as we were when we went into quarantine. So this is going to be a spoiler-free discussion. I do want to talk about the film, but I also want you guys to watch it and follow it on social media. And the best part is you can do all that by clicking the links right down here in the description. So, Nick, a little bit about the film. Did you write this film as well, or were you just director or producer on it?
Yeah, I wrote this film, and yeah, it is a direct result of COVID, whatever, mental illness, mental distress. Like, what am I doing every day? Feels monotonous. And but I also was like reconnecting with people from my past, and yeah. I think everyone was like, oh, we can chat on Zoom. And then like slowly but surely the cracks, and you're like, oh, it's not like we're not 15 anymore, or we're not in college anymore. And it's not, you kind of realize that everyone has grown apart in different ways. And I was like, I wanted to capture that. And I wanted to capture just one thing that I didn't like about a lot of the media that's coming out now. It either plays COVID up to like a zombie apocalypse. It's like absurd what they do, or they just ignore it. And I'm like, both of those are kind of an unfair representation of what we went through. So what I really wanted to capture was like, no, this is like, this was life. This was a real thing. And it still kind of is, depending where you're at. So that was something that really inspired this. And I was coming off a Kickstarter for a different project that I didn't fund. And I had worked with a really awesome group of talented people. My co-producer, Drew Marion, who is like my lead editor on so many projects. We worked together over at Machinima and WB. Blake Gayton, who's my DP. He was my DP over at DC Daily. Kate Matlock, who's in makeup effects, very good friend of mine. And she did all the beauty makeup as well as the horror makeup in the movie. And we worked together at Machinima. So we hadn't seen each other for like a year. And I was like, do you guys want to go make a movie? And they were like, yes. And and we jammed and we hit it, and it was really nice, awesome collaboration to kind of break the fog of it all.
Something I like about what you just said is not only did this come from real life with, the quarantines that we all went through and being secluded from everybody else, but we're not the same people we were when we were 15. And there's times where you do reconnect with somebody and you realize, would I like this person now if we didn't have the past that we had? If I met this person today, would I feel the same way about him? We've all had that experience in our lives. And some people grow up, some people grow down, and that's just a fact. That's just how life goes. And what I love about this movie, again, I'm not going to get spoilery here, but there's definitely homages to movies that I loved growing up. With Invasion of the, I don't want to get too spoilers. I really feel like this is a film you guys need to watch, but I had a great time with it, and I really appreciate some of the homages that went into this film. Now, was a lot of that planned, or was it just kind of on like as you were rolling, hey, let's try this and see how this works?
So for a movie of this scale, the budget, the actual monetary budget was extremely low. But the man hours and the experience that were on set were really high. So like, I like to clarify that. Like, yes, it's a really low budget movie, but there were a lot of working professionals like jamming pretty hard on this. When you're making a small movie, we shot it in 6 days. When you're making a movie of this scale, there is no, you're not leaving too much up to chance. Like in my style of directing is there's very specific moments that are written and storyboarded. And then I have other sequences where I kind of set up like a shooting gallery where we can experiment a little bit more.
Sure.
And working with Blake and working with Drew so closely, they know how I work and I know how they work. And like I knew that like certain scenes we were going to highlight things, but there's an homage. So if you're a fan of horror, sci-fi, especially 80s, 90s, little late 70s, you got homages to The Shining that are fairly obvious. You got homages to The Thing and just like the general pastiche of Carpenter because he's a big influence on my career. You get some of that the Twilight Zone, because the Twilight Zone was such a big influence on me, and just having like an encapsulated story that satisfies you through. Like I wanted to do that, and I wanted to give that sense of dread, but also that mirroring society. So there's a lot of, and there's like very specific. Sarah is named after Sarah Connor, Michael after Michael Myers, Danny Red Rum,
Yep.
and the finger does come into play.
Yes. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about with the cast. Ted, Madeline, Colton, they're awesome in this film. And you can really feel like a genuine connection between these three. Like they really are friends that are, trying to reconnect and rekindle. Was it pretty easy to cast them? Was this a fairly quick casting process, or?
So it was a quick casting process, but not necessarily an easy one. Ted and I had worked together for a long time. He was in a bunch of my sketches, and then we had done stuff over at Machinima. We did stuff for WB. So Ted was like kind of a no-brainer to do this with. I sort of wrote the role for him. And then Colton, he was in a friend of mine's short. It's called like it was like 2020. I don't know if you saw. It was basically a 1917 parody, but 2020, where it was like a oneer. And I thought it was just like so great in it. And I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. Like I definitely want to get him in the movie. But my female lead, it's really difficult to find an actress that will go out into a low budget type situation and give a top level performance without needing the amenities of a top level performance. So that was but Kate Matlock, my makeup effects artist, she was like, Nick, I think I know that she's like, I work with this woman. She's been out in the redwoods, just running around screaming on the shoot, but I think she would be good for your movie. She connected me with Madeline. I had one phone conversation with her, and I was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
And had a good feeling. I mean, yeah, we did it.
What I love is you're talking about, the low budget. And I think that especially nowadays, the low budget, I would rather see a low budget film with a lot of heart than a huge budget with no character arc whatsoever. That just depends on over usage of CGI or practical effects that don't really need the budget for that. Now, another thing I love about your film, there's no filler. This is a 62-minute film. And I think that we're getting more leaning towards that. We don't need to have a 3.5-hour movie where you could have cut an hour and a half out of the film. I love the fact that, we're in here. Let's do this. Let's get the entertainment in there. I hate the bar of an hour and a half. A movie has to be no, it doesn't. If you've got a story to tell me, I liken this to Host. Host is one of my favorite movies that's come out in the last 5 years, and it's an hour long. You don't have to have a film be an hour and a half to punch you in the mouth and get you in the stomach. And this movie does that with a great runtime. So was this a thing where you knew you wanted to be right around an hour, or was that just like a happy accident?
It was, so one of my trepidations, and again, like there's been like negative comments about the runtime. I appreciate it because like my mind set is your mindset, where it's something should be as long as it needs to be.
Yes.
I wanted to make a feature, and when you're dealing on the budget, it was like form follows function, right? You're basically allocating X amount of dollars per day to make a project. And I was like, do I bloat this and make an 80-minute, 90-minute feature? And we're over there just stuffing it with like conversation, or do I make it the tightest possible thing it can be, atmospheric, tell the story I need to tell? And I'm like, who am I trying to please with bloating the runtime? Like some arbitrary old, like it's never going to play in a theater, like unless I like four-wall it or something like that. So like the end, like, and when I look at some of my most favorite content right now, episodes of The Mandalorian come to mind, episodes of Black Mirror, they're like not even an hour long. And I'm like, they did more and were more successful than, let's say, a 2.5-hour movie where you're just sitting there and you're like, I don't even like, we've saw 3 movies. I don't know if you saw like No Time to Die had like 4 movies in it. I was like, I don't know
Yeah.
what like storylines wrapped up and restarted. I was like, this is a TV show. Like what's going, so I, I look back at all my favorite cinema and I don't think audiences have the same patience that they once did.
Right.
But I feel like if Old Strangers was made in 1980, it would probably be a 90-minute movie, but I would have been allowed to take my time in different ways. Where
Sure.
today, I feel like you're still competing with, there's TikTok, there's YouTube, there's IG, there's streaming shows out the wazoo. It's like, you don't have the luxury of sitting with a cup of coffee in a scene like you maybe once did, because people are gonna be bored. They're gonna turn it off.
Right.
I'm like, oh, and like, I think for me, it's like, I thought about the viewer. I didn't think about the mechanics of the industry. I was like, what is the best viewing experience? And Drew Marion is my lead editor. He's my co-executive producer. He and I just ping pong scenes. Like he would cut it, I would take it, cut it. We went back and forth. We did that with every aspect of post-production. And I got to say, we're not dudes that are like, leave it. Like we were, we kind of come from 2 different angles of editing and post work. So we would really kind of tear things apart and recut it and slim it down. And like, yeah, we really wanted to make a tight piece that didn't feel rushed, but then we didn't want to bloat it for some arbitrary runtime because it really didn't matter. And 60 minutes is still technically a feature. So
and you look at some of the old slasher films, and I'm a huge slasher fan. Obviously, everybody that knows me knows, huge slasher fan. But we don't need seven different scenes of a girl running through the woods from point A to point B just to fill the time.
Yeah.
We don't need that conversation that lasts for 5 minutes about the past that never comes back into play. It's just a time filler. Yeah. These are things as we've gotten older, we've realized that we don't need these time filler moments, because that's when we start to zone out as a viewer, especially now in a fast-paced world. Like you said, the next TikTok is just a scroll away.
Just scroll away.
The next YouTube video is a click away. So when you have this fast-paced world that we live in, you need a fast-paced movie. And I don't want to sound like an asshole in saying that. Look, if you can make a 3-hour movie and keep me entertained the whole time, good on you. It's a lot of work, and I appreciate what you're doing. But like you said, we don't have to have this arbitrary, it must be 90 minutes or it's not a film. Shut the fuck up, man. Like, let me watch my movie and be entertained with what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's not like you don't like. It's not like something weird happens if it's not 90 minutes. It's not like, oh no, I appreciate all the kind words, but like I feel like it is a very complete movie in that 60 minutes, and it feels like a movie. I mean, one of the things that I was stressing was like, it still needs to feel like a movie, because people be like, oh, why not make a short? I'm like, because a short feels differently. If you bloat a short, it feels like there's filler in it, because a short to me is. Shorts 5 to 10 minutes. That's where shorts work perfectly. If you're in the 20-minute range, you might as well make a feature, because I'm like, if I'm sitting down to watch something that's 20 minutes long, I'll watch a movie at that point. It's and I there was a little bit of a criticism where it was like, could have been 20 minutes. I'm like, impossible. I was like, the events of the movie you couldn't condense in 20 minutes.
No way.
The person was like, I love the first 20 minutes of the movie. And then he was like, it could have only been 20 minutes. And like, you couldn't have loved the first 20 minutes. And then it also was 20 minutes. That's not.
You couldn't have that for the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
No, yeah.
And like you said, it's something else that you just brought up with, nothing happens if it doesn't last 90 minutes. How many times have you heard someone say, man, that movie could have been longer, against, man, they could have cut so much out of that movie? Exactly. It always comes down to, oh man, I love this movie, but man, there was so many scenes that they could have just gotten rid of. And that's what you've done with this. You took those arbitrary scenes that we didn't need to have as filler. You got rid of them. Everything is to the point. Let's watch this. Let's do this. And let's have a good time. Let's enjoy it. And that's exactly what my wife and I did. We watched this movie. Wow. We had a great time with it. And I was so excited to do this interview with you to talk about it. And it's really hard for me to not get spoilery right now, but that's not my DNA. It's not in my culture.
We get a little spoilery.
So, okay, if we're going to get a little spoilery here, the events of this movie, how do I want to word this without? It takes a hard left turn on you once you get into the woods. What was it like for you guys filming out there in the woods?
We were out there. I don't know if you've ever been to Big Bear, California, but Big Bear's like a 4,000-foot elevation, 3,500 feet elevation. So you're up, it's cold. There's like an altitude to it where you're like, and we were out in the woods shooting this stuff. for multiple days with multiple setups. That initial hike, the like friends having fun hike, like we hiked, man. We hiked with the equipment. We went up and down and like found different, because I was like, one of the goals in the movie was to show isolation. And
Sure.
you know, Big Bear is like a resort town. It did get hit pretty hard with the pandemic, but there's still like people around. There's people doing stuff. But I really wanted to isolate it, and to do that, we had to go out there. Like we had to be in the cut, and it just added to the depth. I know there like one scene in particular, they're just coming down this hill, and it's supernatural, but not supernatural, but it's very natural.
Right.
But we had the room and space. It's a long lens, and they're just coming down this area, and you get that like, oh, they're in the woods, like they're on a hike, they're deep in there. And and then later on in the picture, as we play it to horrific effect, we're still out in the woods, and it snowed. Like we got blessed by the movie gods. We got snow, so that was like a huge. We were like, what? Like it was amazing, yeah.
And the sense of dread that comes in once you start to, when the ball hits the bat, the sense of dread that really comes in with this film. I liken it to, I mean, I've always been a big fan of alien or body snatcher type film, and the dread that comes in here about 3/4 of the way through, there's no levity there till the end. Writing a script like this, was it? I know a lot of it was based on obviously what we were going through with the quarantine and everything, but how much of this was a stretch for you? Like, was this very easy to write, or once you started writing, did you go right through, or was it hard to get those twisty and turns there at the end?
No, it was a very quick writing process. It was about 2 days. I just sat down.
Oh, wow.
I do a lot of the writing in my head. I had wanted, so there's actually a sequel to Old Strangers called Not Like Us, but Old Strangers is technically the prequel to Not Like Us. So I wrote Not Like Us, which took place in a roadside bar right out of Buffalo, New York. And it's about a bunch of strangers that get snowed in, and they find out about an invasion. And I was in that world for so long trying to make that movie that I was like, oh, you know, it'd be cool prequel, like a very, like a smaller scale down, in the vein of Evil Dead, like kind of prequel where you find out what this is and where it came from.
How it started.
And you could actually listen to I did a radio play of Not Like Us. It's like a 5-part radio play. And it's a sequel to Old Strangers. It literally goes from like the end of Old Strangers to right into the events of Not Like Us. So I had a lot of the world, the mechanics, the justifications of things already marinating. And I just sat down, and there was so much of the like, there's a sequence, and it's in the trailer. It's the oneer when she goes in the house. That scene really pushed me over to be like, I need to make this. I was like, because I think that scene is terrifying. I think it's we use a few different techniques, like a Hitchcock with a ticking time bomb under the chair. The audience knows more than the protagonist, and you also don't know what is going to happen at the end of that sequence. And that was, I think it's one of the last shots of the movie that we got, because we had to clear all the equipment out of the house. That house was packed with equipment, so we had to clear the whole house out. We had to clean the whole house, and then do this one shot. And it was that to me is like that really wanted me to make this movie, because I came up with the shot and I was like, okay, all right, I think I have something here. I think we can do this.
One shots are always the hardest to pull off. How many takes do you remember about how many takes you had to do to make that one shot work?
We did 9.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, by then it was like we'd been shooting, and everyone knew the cadence of the workflow. They knew that it was like, I'm like, I actually give myself low marks for this. I wish I'd do more takes. I don't do a ton of takes, so I'm like, once I kind of get it, I'm like, yeah, let's move on. Very like Clint Eastwood style. Like, let's treat this like a job. And if everyone is doing their job, we don't need to butcher this thing. It was mostly for camera movement, because as you can imagine, we went upstairs, over thresholds. There's an iris pull. So my DP, Blake Gayton, just absolutely, like, he lit the shit out of every scene. Like, there is nothing that isn't like properly lit out there, and I'm very proud of that, and that he had the opportunity to do that. But he does an iris pull going in the house that
Okay.
it's imperceptible. So we're outside, it's daylight. He goes in and hits an iris pull on a steady cam so that he's operating almost himself. And there's a focus puller, James Grant, who was amazing. He was also like our tech equipment handler. But James is pulling focus, and you have her going into the kitchen, going up the stairs, and you're walking up the stairs, and it's a buttery smooth.
It looks really good.
Yeah, and the reveal, I'm very proud of the reveal, because the movie changes like that on that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You know, when the ball hits the bat, it's going down now. And another thing about one takes, they're always my favorite thing to watch in a film. You know, studying film and knowing film, watching these one takes that can be so fluid like that is something to be very proud of. So I wanted to bring that up. I have that in my notes here too, the one take, but very proud. Anytime I watch somebody that can successfully pull off a one take, it's so super cool, man. So kudos to you on doing that.
Thank you.
Now you said Not Like Us. Are you going to be putting that to film?
I mean, if fingers crossed, knock on wood for Micah, we got if this does well, there's 2 movies that I'm going to try to make following it up. I'm hoping it can be Not Like Us. Not Like Us is a really fun picture. It's, again, it plays with all those genre tropes, but then it kind of flips it on its head.
Sure.
If Old Strangers holds up a mirror to COVID, Not Like Us holds up a mirror to social media.
Okay, cool.
So it is, that's these are 2 things that, like, I think my whole career will probably be wrapped around trying to figure them out because of everything they've done to us, COVID and social media. Like, I don't, like it's really hard to like move past them. But
well, I mean, and again, I would never downplay COVID. My wife is a respiratory therapist. COVID is something I take very seriously, and I'm so sorry for anybody that's been truly hardly affected by this. But I think with COVID, we've also realized how much we appreciate filmmakers and all the work that you guys do, because without film throughout this pandemic, a lot of us would have lost our fucking minds. So, you know, you guys are still out there working, and you're giving us content that we can enjoy. And I want to remind everybody that I do have all the links right down here in the description. So make sure you're checking this out. I want to make sure we're getting Old Strangers out there too, because I want to see where the story goes. And I think when the credits hit on this, you're going to want to know where the story goes too. So before I let you go, I was going to ask you at the end about a sequel, but we've already crossed that bridge. So my goal is to have Nick back on an episode of My First Horror Movie here in the near future. So, but until then, guys, make sure you're following up on these social media links. Make sure you're checking the film out. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of the film. Nick, don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Okay. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, click these links in the description for yourself, not for us. Until next time, guys, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.